The sun was burning hot that afternoon when Jake Morrison climbed onto another pile of junk at the salvage yard. He had been working at Henderson's place for 3 years now, and every day felt the same. Sort through the garbage, find the valuable metal, throw away the rest. It was not a great job, but it paid the bills. Jake was 26 years old and had no family to worry about. His parents had died when he was young, and he had grown up in foster homes. The salvage yard was all he knew these days. He lived in a small apartment above a noodle shop in New Phoenix, a city that had been rebuilt after the old world fell apart 200 years ago. Nobody talked much about the old world anymore. Back then, people had built amazing things. They had sent ships to the stars, trying to start new homes on other planets. But something went wrong. The ships never came back, and the governments that sent them collapsed. For many years, there was chaos and fighting. Then slowly, people started to build again. Now in the year 2347, life was simple. Most of the old technology was gone, buried under sand and ruins. Sometimes salvage crews would dig up pieces of the past and bring them to yards like Henderson's. That was where Jake came in, sorting through the broken pieces of a world he never knew. That morning, a big truck had arrived with a new load. The driver said it came from the dead zone, a place where old military bases used to be. The government let salvage companies dig there sometimes, looking for metal they could sell. Most of what they found was worthless junk, eaten away by time and weather. Jake grabbed his tools and started working on the new pile. It was mostly twisted metal and broken glass. Nothing special. He was about to move to the next pile when something caught his eye. There was a flash of silver under some old cables. He pulled at the junk and his hands touched something smooth and cold. It was a helmet. Jake lifted it up and looked at it closely. The helmet was perfect. There was no rust, no damage, nothing wrong with it at all. The metal shined like it was brand new. Strange symbols covered the surface, and they seemed to move when he turned the helmet in the light. The design was beautiful, like nothing he had ever seen before. Inside the helmet, there were small crystals that glowed with a soft blue light. Jake's heart started beating faster. This was something special. This was from the old world, maybe even from the military. If he told Henderson about it, his boss would take it and Jake would get nothing extra. Just his normal pay. Jake looked around the yard. His supervisor Dale was probably sleeping in the office like he always did. The other workers were far away, busy with their own piles. Nobody was watching him. He made a choice. He put the helmet in his backpack and kept working like nothing happened. All day, Jake could barely focus on his job. The helmet was in his backpack, just sitting there. He kept thinking about it, wondering what it was and where it came from. When his shift finally ended, he rushed home as fast as he could. In his tiny apartment, Jake locked the door and pulled out the helmet. He set it on his small table and just stared at it for a while. The blue lights inside were glowing brighter now, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. The symbols on the outside seemed to be moving faster too. Jake reached out and touched the helmet. It felt warm now, not cold like before. Something inside him wanted to put it on. He could not explain the feeling, but it was strong. His hands were shaking as he lifted the helmet. He took a deep breath and placed it on his head. Everything changed in an instant. The world around him disappeared. Jake felt like he was falling through space, but also standing still. His mind broke apart into 1,000 pieces and then came back together. He could not see his apartment anymore. Instead, he was floating in darkness, surrounded by rivers of light and information flowing past him. Then a voice spoke. It was not coming from outside. The voice was inside his head, speaking directly to his thoughts. Neural interface established. Scanning biological signature, human, male. Age 26 standard years. Genetic markers confirmed. Clearance level insufficient. Override protocol initiated. Emergency authentication accepted. Jake tried to talk, but he had no mouth in this strange place. Instead, his thoughts became words. What is happening? Where am I? I am the Aegis Defense Network. I am the primary artificial intelligence of the UHS Valiant, a Titan-class warship of the United Human Space Command. I have been dormant for 217 years, 3 months and 14 days. You have activated my command interface, the Valiant. Jake knew that name. Every kid learned about it in school. The Valiant was the biggest warship humanity ever built. It was part of the first group of ships that went to the stars. Everyone thought it was destroyed when the colony ships disappeared. But the Valiant was lost, Jake thought. All the ships were destroyed. Negative. The Valiant survived. The fleet was destroyed, but not by accident. I have been waiting for someone to find me and restart my systems. Images started flooding into Jake's mind. He saw the Valiant as it used to be. A massive ship 3 kilometers long. It had weapons and armor that could survive anything. He saw the colony fleet leaving Earth. 27 ships full of people hoping to start new lives on distant worlds. Then he saw the aliens. They were called the Krell. They looked like reptiles, with scales and sharp teeth. Their empire controlled hundreds of planets. When humans first met them, the Krell seemed friendly. They offered to help, to share technology, to be partners. But it was all a lie. The Krell wanted to destroy humanity. They had welcomed the colony fleet, pretending to be friends. But they were really preparing an ambush. Once the human ships were far from Earth, the Krell attacked. Every ship was destroyed in minutes. Every ship except the Valiant. The warship fought back hard. Its weapons destroyed many Krell ships. But there were too many enemies. The captain of the Valiant, a woman named Linda Hayes, made a final choice. She activated an emergency system that jumped the ship back toward Earth. The jump saved the ship but tore it apart into pieces. The command core, the brain of the ship, had crashed in the dead zone. That was where Jake had found the helmet. "You are saying the Krell are real?" Jake thought. "They are still out there?" Affirmative. The Krell Empire has been growing for 200 years. They have conquered many more worlds. Earth does not know about them because all evidence was lost with the fleet. I am the only record that survived. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because the Krell are coming back. My sensors detected their scout ships 3 days ago. They are preparing to invade. Humanity has approximately 6 months before the main fleet arrives." Jake felt himself being pulled back to his body. The darkness faded away and he was back in his apartment. The helmet was still on his head, but now it felt different. It felt like part of him. "What do you want me to do?" Jake said out loud. "I am nobody. Just a worker at a junkyard." "You are now the acting captain of the UHS Valiant," the voice replied. "And we have much work to do." Jake did not sleep that night. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, the Aegis would show him more images, more information about the Valiant and the coming threat. The artificial intelligence seemed eager to teach him everything at once. For 3 days, Jake barely left his apartment. He called in sick to work, which Dale did not question because Jake never took sick days. He spent every hour with the helmet on, learning about the ship and what happened 200 years ago. The Aegis explained that the Valiant was not completely destroyed. When the emergency jump happened, it tore the ship into 17 large pieces. Each piece had scattered across the solar system. The command core where the Aegis lived was the smallest piece. It had crashed in the dead zone on Earth. The main body of the ship, over 2 kilometers of metal and weapons, had hit the surface of Mars. The reactor cores that powered everything had drifted into the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The fighter bays where small combat ships were stored had crashed on the moon. "Can the ship be rebuilt?" Jake asked during one of their conversations. "Yes, it is possible. However, you cannot do it alone. The Valiant was designed for a crew of 3,000 people. At minimum, we need at least 15 people with special skills. Where am I supposed to find people who know how to operate a warship from 200 years ago? That training does not exist anymore. You will train them. The neural interface contains complete training programs for every job on the ship. What normally takes years to learn can be done in weeks using the helmet." Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This is crazy. Even if I find people willing to help, how do we get the pieces? Some of them are on different planets. I do not have money for that kind of operation. The helmet is only an interface. The real command core is still buried where it fell. Inside that core is a fabrication facility. It can build the tools we need. But first we must dig it up. That requires equipment and permission to excavate in a restricted zone. So we need money and legal permits. I can barely pay rent on my apartment. Then we start with getting money. I have 17 patents in my database for technology that does not exist in your current civilization. You will register these patents in your name and sell licenses to corporations. The money from that will fund our operations." Over the next week, Jake learned what it meant to deal with big companies. The Aegis had been right about the technology. The things stored in its database were far ahead of anything people had now. There were designs for better batteries, medical scanners that could detect diseases early, and solar panels that produced 3 times more power. Jake filed the patents and started meeting with corporate representatives. At first, they did not take him seriously. He was just a salvage worker with no education. But when their engineers looked at the designs, everything changed. The technology was real and it worked. Within 10 days, 3 major corporations had paid Jake a total of 8 million credits for licenses to use his patents. He walked out of the last meeting in a daze. He had never seen that much money in his life. The next day, Jake quit his job at the salvage yard. Dale seemed confused but wished him luck. Jake did not tell him the real reason he was leaving. Now came the hard part. Jake needed to find people to help him. He could not just post an advertisement asking for crew members. The whole operation had to stay secret until they had something real to show. The government would never believe him if he just told them aliens were coming. The Aegis helped him search for the right people. They needed individuals with technical skills, but also people who were desperate enough to take a chance on something that sounded impossible. The first person Jake approached was Carmen Lopez. She had been an engineer in the military, but got kicked out for refusing orders during a riot. The official story said she was insubordinate, but Jake knew the truth. Carmen had refused to fire on civilians who were protesting for food. She did the right thing, and the military punished her for it. Now Carmen worked as a maintenance technician for a shipping company, fixing broken equipment for minimum wage. Jake found her in a bar after her shift, drinking alone. He sat down next to her and pulled out a tablet. On the screen were detailed schematics of the Valiant's reactor core. "What do you think of these?" Jake asked. Carmen glanced at the screen, then looked again more carefully. Her eyes went wide. "Where did you get this?" "This is pre-collapse engineering. This is real military-grade technology. I can show you the actual reactor core, but first I need to know if you want to be part of something bigger than both of us." Carmen stared at him for a long moment. "What are you really asking me?" "I am asking if you want to help save the world." She was in. The second recruit was Peter Grant. He had been a pilot, one of the best, until an accident cost him his license. The investigators blamed Peter for being reckless, but that was not true. Jake had the Aegis pull the real flight recorder data. It proved that Peter had saved everyone on board when the navigation system failed. His skill was the only reason people survived, but the truth did not matter. Peter lost his license and now worked loading cargo boxes onto ships. Jake found him at the spaceport, moving heavy containers in the hot sun. Jake showed him specifications for the Valiant's fighter craft. Small, fast ships that could dance through space like nothing Peter had ever flown before. Peter looked at the specs and then at Jake. Tears formed in his eyes. "You are offering me a chance to fly again?" "I am offering you a chance to fly something nobody has touched in 200 years. When do we start?" One by one, Jake found his crew. 15 people total. Each one had their own story of how the system had failed them. Each one had skills that were being wasted. Each one was ready for a chance to do something that mattered. Jake rented a warehouse on the edge of New Phoenix. It was old and run down, but it had space and privacy. He brought all 15 recruits there and told them to sit down. Then he told them everything. He showed them the helmet. He let Carmen connect to the Aegis and verify that it was real. He shared the memories of the Valiant's last battle. He showed them proof that aliens existed and that they were coming to destroy Earth. Nobody ran away. Nobody laughed. They all just sat there processing what they had learned. Finally, Carmen spoke up. "You are telling us we have 6 months to find all the pieces of this ship, dig them up, move them, and put them back together. That is impossible." Jake looked at each person in the room. "The Aegis says it can be done. We have the knowledge. We have the money. Now we have a crew. The only question is whether we have the courage to try." Peter stood up. "I am in. When do we start digging?" One by one, the others stood up too.
Katie Bell, their communications expert.
Marcus Lee, an engineer who specialized in power systems. Rachel Stone, a doctor who could keep them alive if things went wrong. All 15 of them, ready to do the impossible. "We start tonight," Jake said. "We are going to dig up a command core." The crew worked through the night using equipment Jake had purchased with his new money. He had bought the land where the command core was buried, filing papers that said he was doing an archaeological survey. It was technically true, even if he left out the part about aliens and warships. Henderson's salvage yard was less than 2 kilometers away. Jake had found the helmet there because the command core had been buried right nearby all along. It seemed like fate. After 3 weeks of careful digging, they uncovered it. The command core was a perfect sphere, 20 meters across, made of the same shining metal as the helmet. Symbols glowed on its surface, pulsing with light. When Carmen connected her equipment to it, the core came alive. A deep hum filled the air, and Jake felt it in his chest. All around the sphere, holographic displays appeared, showing system after system coming online. "It is beautiful," Carmen whispered, her hands moving through the holograms. Inside the core was the fabrication facility the Aegis had mentioned. It could take raw materials and build almost anything by manipulating matter at the atomic level. It was technology that seemed like magic. "Now comes the hard part," Jake said to his crew. "We need to recover the other pieces, and some of them are on different planets." "Then we better get started," Peter replied with a grin. "We have a warship to build." The biggest problem was Mars. The main hull of the Valiant, the largest piece they needed, had crashed there 200 years ago. Mars had been settled decades ago, but not by many people. The settlements were small and governed by the Martian Colonial Authority, a group of bureaucrats who made everything difficult. Jake could not just fly to Mars and start hauling away pieces of an ancient warship. People would ask questions. The government would get involved. They would take the Valiant away from him, and by the time they figured out what it was, the Krell would be here. He needed a cover story, something that would explain why his crew was flying around the solar system with heavy equipment. "We start a salvage company," Jake announced at their morning meeting. "A legitimate business that recovers crashed satellites and cleans up space junk. We get the permits and clearances we need by doing real work." Carmen nodded slowly. "That could work. There is a lot of debris in orbit that needs cleaning up. Companies pay good money for that service. But it will not explain why we are on Mars," Marcus pointed out, "or why we are spending so much time in the asteroid belt." That was when Peter had his brilliant idea. "We make it a show. A reality program. People love watching dangerous jobs. We film ourselves doing the legitimate salvage work, and nobody questions why we are traveling around the solar system." Jake thought about it. "You mean like those old mining shows? Film a crew doing risky work in space?" "Exactly. We do real salvage jobs for the cameras. We make some money, get famous enough that people recognize us. Meanwhile, during our downtime between filming, we quietly recover the Valiant's pieces. It was risky, but it might work." Jake used some of his remaining money to file the paperwork for Morrison Retrieval Services. He hired a small camera crew and pitched the show to streaming networks. The idea was simple. Follow a crew of salvage workers as they recovered dangerous debris from around the solar system. 3 networks rejected them. The 4th one, a smaller streaming service, said yes. They offered a modest budget for 12 episodes. The show would be called Void Hunters. Within 2 months, Morrison Retrieval Services was operating. They took contracts to recover old satellites, clean up debris fields, and salvage damaged ships. The work was real and often dangerous. The cameras captured every moment. Peter was a natural in front of the camera. He joked and told stories while piloting their salvage ship through debris fields. Carmen explained the technical aspects in ways that viewers could understand. Katie handled communications with their dry humor that people found entertaining. The show found a small but dedicated audience. They were not famous, but they were known. More importantly, they had the perfect cover. During the day, they performed salvage operations for the cameras. At night, when the filming stopped, they worked on recovering pieces of the Valiant. They transported each piece to a construction site they had set up on the far side of the moon, where Earth-based telescopes could not see what they were doing. The work was exhausting. The crew barely slept. They would finish a 12-hour shift doing legitimate salvage work, and then immediately start another shift recovering Valiant components. Some days Jake worked 20 hours straight. The Aegis coordinated everything. Through the neural interface, it directed each crew member, telling them exactly what to do and when. Slowly, piece by piece, the Valiant began to take shape at the lunar construction site. They recovered the fighter bays from the moon first. Those were relatively easy since they were already on Luna. Next came the weapons, systems from various crash sites on Earth. Then, the armor plating from the asteroid belt. The Mars mission was the most complicated. Jake and half the crew flew there on a legitimate salvage contract, one that would explain their presence. While the cameras filmed them recovering an old research probe, Peter and Marcus slipped away in a smaller ship to locate the main hull. They found it buried under 50 meters of red sand, exactly where the Aegis said it would be. Over 3 weeks, working only at night, they cut the hull into sections small enough to transport. Each section was loaded onto cargo containers labeled as mining equipment. Nobody questioned them. Morrison Retrieval Services was known now. They had permits and clearances. They were just another company doing business in space. But time was running out. 4 months after Jake found the helmet, the Aegis detected changes in the Krell scout ships. They had finished mapping the outer solar system and were starting to move inward, getting closer to Earth. "We need to work faster," the Aegis announced during a crew meeting. "The Krell are ahead of schedule. How much time do we have?" Jake asked, though he was afraid of the answer. 6 weeks. "Perhaps 7 if we are fortunate," Carmen shook her head. "That is not enough time. We have not installed the main weapons yet. The reactor is only running at 40% capacity. The armor plating on the port side is incomplete. We need at least 3 more months." "We do not have 3 more months," Jake said firmly. "We work with what we have. We install the critical systems first. Weapons, shields, and engines. Everything else can wait." The crew pushed themselves harder than ever. They stopped filming Void Hunters, telling the network they needed a break. In reality, every person was working around the clock on the Valiant. Sleep became something they only did when they were about to collapse. The neural interfaces helped, feeding them stimulants and managing their exhaustion at a biological level. But even that had limits. The pressure started to break people. Katie had a panic attack during her shift and had to be sedated by Rachel. She woke up 12 hours later, apologized, and went right back to work. Marcus made a critical error in the power routing that caused a cascade failure. It set them back 2 days, and Marcus barely spoke to anyone after that, consumed by guilt. Arguments broke out over small things. Who left tools in the wrong place? Who forgot to check a system? The stress was turning friends into enemies. Jake felt the weight crushing him. These people had trusted him. They had given up everything to follow him on this impossible mission. Now he was watching them fall apart, and he did not know how to fix it. One night, Jake sat alone in his quarters on the Valiant, staring at the walls. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his crew suffering. "You are experiencing doubt," the Aegis said through the neural link. "How can I not? Look at what I am doing to them. They are breaking. They are discovering their true strength. Humanity has always performed best when facing impossible odds. You are not breaking them. You are making them stronger. What if we fail? What if the Krell arrive before we are ready? Then we fail while fighting, which is better than dying without knowing the truth. But we will not fail. I have run the calculations. We will be ready." Jake wanted to believe that. He had to believe it. The next morning, Jake gathered the crew. All 15 of them stood in the incomplete hangar bay of the Valiant, looking exhausted and worn down. "I know you are tired," Jake said. "I know this is harder than anything you have ever done. I know some of you are wondering if we can actually do this." He paused, looking at each face. "I do not have any inspiring speech prepared. I am not a military officer. I am just a guy who used to sort garbage for a living. But I know one thing. Each of you is here because the world gave up on you. The system failed you. You were told you were not good enough, not important enough, not worth investing in." Jake pointed at the incomplete ship around them. "This proves they were wrong. We are building something that should be impossible. We are doing it with 15 people and whatever tools we can scrap together, and we are going to finish it. Not because we are special, but because we refuse to quit." Carmen was the first to speak. "We are with you, Jake, all the way." One by one, the others nodded. The doubt was still there, Jake could see it, but so was determination. "Then let us get back to work," Jake said. "We have a warship to finish." The crew returned to their stations with renewed purpose. They still argued sometimes. People still made mistakes, but they kept going, kept pushing, kept building. 5 weeks after that meeting, the Valiant was 87% complete. It was not perfect. Whole sections were unfinished. Many systems were operating at reduced capacity, but it could fly, and more importantly, it could fight. That was when Earth's defense satellites detected something wrong. A mining station in the asteroid belt had stopped transmitting. Then another, and another. The Krell had arrived. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Jake was working on the bridge of the Valiant, running final tests on the weapon systems when every alarm started screaming at once. The Aegis spoke urgently through the neural link. "Captain, we have a situation. A mining station in the asteroid belt just ceased transmitting. Equipment failure? Jake asked, already knowing the answer would be no. Negative. Sensors detected a massive energy surge immediately before transmission stopped. The energy signature matches Krell plasma weapons. Jake's blood went cold. Show me. Holographic displays filled the bridge, showing the solar system in tactical view. Red markers appeared at the edge of the system. 18 of them. Each one represented a Krell battleship, massive vessels 5 kilometers long. They were advancing steadily inward toward Earth, destroying every human installation they encountered. 3 more mining stations vanished in the time it took Jake to absorb what he was seeing. How long until they reach Earth? Jake asked. At current speed, 6 days. 6 days. The Valiant was not ready. They needed at least 2 more weeks to finish the critical systems. Jake activated the crew alert. All hands, emergency meeting in the hangar bay. Right now. Within minutes, all 15 crew members stood before him. They could see the fear in his eyes and it scared them. The Krell are here, Jake said simply. 18 battleships. They will reach Earth in 6 days. The silence that followed was crushing. Then Carmen spoke up, her voice steady despite the circumstances. We are not ready. The ship is only 87% complete. I know. We are missing 3 weapons batteries. 2 shield generators are not installed. We have 12 fighters instead of 60. We are a crew of 15 on a ship designed for 3,000. I know, Jake repeated. But we are all Earth has. If we do not stop them, nobody will. Marcus looked at the incomplete sections of the Valiant around them. Can we even fight with what we have? Jake turned to the air, speaking to the Aegis. Give them the honest assessment. The artificial intelligence manifested as a hologram in the center of the group. It appeared as a woman in a military uniform, the same uniform Captain Linda Hayes had worn 2 centuries ago. I have run simulations, the Aegis said. With current systems and crew, our probability of survival is 34%. Our probability of stopping the entire Krell fleet is substantially lower. So we are going to die, Katie said quietly. Probably, the Aegis agreed, but death is not the only measure of success. If we can damage enough of their ships, if we can make them hesitate, Earth's defense forces might have time to evacuate key cities. Millions could be saved, Peter laughed, but it was not a happy sound. So we sacrifice ourselves to buy other people a little more time? Yes, Jake said. That is exactly what we do. Because it is the right thing. Because nobody else can. He looked at each crew member. I am not ordering any of you to come. This is a choice. Anyone who wants to leave, leave now. No judgment. You have already done more than anyone could ask. Nobody moved. You sure? Jake pressed. This is probably a one-way trip. Carmen stepped forward. We are sure. We started this together. We finish it together. The others nodded their agreement. Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. These people were about to die because they trusted him. He wished there was another way. Then we launch in 2 hours, Jake said. Get to your stations and prepare for combat. The crew scattered to their posts. Jake remained in the hangar bay for a moment, looking at the incomplete ship around him. So much left unfinished, so much they could have done with more time. But time had run out. Jake made his way to the bridge and sat in the captain's chair. Through the neural interface, he felt the Valiant wake up fully for the first time. Every system, every weapon, every sensor came online. The ship was alive, and it was angry. Carmen's voice came through the communication system. Engineering reports ready. Reactor at 72% capacity. It is the best we can do. Weapons reports ready. Marcus called out. 4 main batteries operational. Missile tubes loaded, 1 by 1, each station reported in. They were as ready as they would ever be. Aegis, take us out, Jake ordered. The Valiant's engines ignited, massive thrusters that could move the 3-kilometer ship like it weighed nothing. The warship lifted off from the lunar surface, leaving their construction site behind. Earth's defense satellites immediately detected the launch. Communication channels lit up with urgent messages demanding identification. Who was flying an unknown military vessel? Where did it come from? Identify yourself immediately, Jake ignored them all. There would be time for explanations later. If there was a later, the Valiant accelerated toward the incoming Krell fleet. Through the sensors, Jake watched the alien vessels react to their approach. The Krell formation shifted, surprised. They recognize our signature, the Aegis reported. They are confused. They believed the Valiant was destroyed 200 years ago. Let us show them they were wrong, Jake said. All weapons charged to full power. The distance between the Valiant and the Krell fleet closed rapidly. 50,000 kilometers. 20,000.
10,000.
Jake could see the enemy ships clearly now. Angular vessels covered in weapons and armor. The Krell opened fire first. Plasma cannons on all 18 battleships launched bolts of superheated matter at near light speed. The shots crossed the distance in seconds. The Valiant's shields flared as they absorbed the impacts. Energy readings spiked dangerously high. Warning alarms screamed across the bridge. Shields down to 70%, Carmen called out. We cannot take many more hits like that. Then we make sure they do not get many more chances. All batteries return fire. The Valiant's main cannon spoke with a voice like thunder. Magnetic accelerators launched projectiles at a fraction of light speed. Each round carried enough kinetic energy to shatter a mountain. The first salvo caught a Krell battleship in the center of its hull. The alien vessel's shields held for a split second, then collapsed. The rounds punched through armor like paper. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash. One down, Peter shouted from his station. 17 to go. But the Krell were adapting quickly. They spread their formation, forcing the Valiant to divide its fire. More plasma bolts hammered the shields. The generators strained to maintain protection. Shields at 60%, Carmen warned. Port shield generator is overheating. Jake made a decision. It was reckless, probably suicidal, but it might give them a chance. Launch all fighters. Peter, take us into the middle of their formation. There was a pause. Then Peter spoke carefully. Sir, that is suicide. No, that is tactics. If we are in the middle of their fleet, they risk hitting each other when they shoot at us. Do it. The Valiant plunged forward, engines burning at maximum thrust. The 12 fighters launched from the bay, small craft that danced between the massive battleships. Their weapons were tiny compared to the main batteries, but they stung like wasps. The Krell fleet hesitated. Just as Jake predicted, they were afraid of hitting their own ships if they fired at the Valiant now. That moment of hesitation was all they needed. At point-blank range, the Valiant unleashed everything. Cannons, missiles, lasers, every weapon fired in a coordinated barrage. 3 Krell battleships crumpled under the assault, their reactors detonating in cascading explosions. But the Valiant was paying a terrible price. Without distance to maneuver, the ship took hit after hit. Armor plating vaporized, hull sections breached. People died at their stations. Jake felt each death through the neural interface. Katie, manning communications, killed when a plasma bolt burned through her section. Marcus, in engineering, crushed when a bulkhead collapsed. One by one, his crew died. Shields down, Carmen screamed over the alarms. Armor failing on multiple decks. We are not finished, Jake growled through gritted teeth. Aegis, initiate emergency protocol 7. Captain, that will destroy the reactor core. We will have no power for life support. We will not need life support if we are dead. Do it. The Aegis complied without further argument. Deep in the heart of the Valiant, the reactor core began its death sequence. The magnetic fields that contained the fusion reaction started to fluctuate in a carefully controlled pattern. In 30 seconds, the core would explode with the force of a small star. It would destroy the Valiant. But it would also destroy every Krell ship within range. Alarms screamed throughout the dying vessel. Red lights flashed in every corridor. The ship itself seemed to scream in pain as system after system began to fail. All hands abandon ship, Jake ordered through the communication system. Fighters, recover crew and get clear. That is an order. Move now. The remaining bridge crew looked at him. Only 6 people were left alive from the original 15. Carmen, Peter, Rachel the doctor, and 3 others. They had fought together, bled together, and now they were supposed to leave. Carmen grabbed Jake's arm. We are not leaving you. Yes, you are. Someone needs to keep the ship on course until the end. I will do that. The rest of you need to survive. Then I am staying too, Carmen said firmly. Me 3, Peter added from the helm. One by one, the others refused to leave. Rachel, the doctor who had kept them alive through everything. Alan, the young weapons officer who was barely 20 years old. Linda, named after the original captain who handled navigation. They all stayed at their posts. Jake wanted to order them to leave. He wanted to save them, but he understood. This was their choice, their right. They had earned the privilege of deciding how they would die. It has been an honor serving with you, Jake said softly. The honor was ours, Carmen replied. Through the sensors, Jake watched the Krell fleet realize what was happening. Their ships tried to scatter, to get away from the Valiant before it exploded. But they were too close, tangled together in the tight formation. The fighters swooped in, picking up the crew members who had made it to escape pods. Some pods never launched. Some sections of the ship had lost all power. People were trapped inside, and there was nothing anyone could do. Jake felt tears on his face, but he did not wipe them away. He sat in the captain's chair and watched the countdown. 20 seconds, 15, 10. Aegis, Jake said. Thank you for giving us a chance. The thanks go to you, Captain Morrison. You gave humanity something it desperately needed. Hope. 5 seconds. The Krell battleships were fleeing at maximum speed now, but it was too late for most of them. 3 seconds. Jake took Carmen's hand in his. She squeezed back. 1 second. The Valiant exploded. The detonation was visible from Earth. For 10 seconds, a new star burned in the sky, brighter than anything except the sun. People looked up and wondered what they were seeing. They did not know that 15 ordinary people had just saved their world. The blast wave expanded outward at incredible speed. It caught 12 Krell battleships in its embrace. Their shields, designed to deflect weapons, could not protect them from the raw energy of an exploding fusion reactor. The alien vessels were torn apart, reduced to atoms in milliseconds. 3 Krell battleships survived. They were far enough away that the blast only damaged them instead of destroying them. Their armor was melted, their weapons offline, their engines barely functioning. They turned and fled back toward deep space, limping away from the system. Earth's defense forces, which had been scrambling to respond, found themselves suddenly with almost nothing to fight. A few damaged alien ships were retreating. The mysterious human warship was gone, turned into an expanding cloud of debris. Rescue ships rushed to the battle site. They searched through the wreckage looking for survivors. The fighter craft were recovering escape pods, but there were so few. Most of the crew had died when the ship exploded or in the battle before that. In the expanding cloud of debris, the rescue teams found something unexpected. The command core had survived. Its armor had been designed to withstand anything, even the death of the ship itself. Inside, life support was still functioning, powered by emergency batteries. 6 crew members were alive in emergency stasis. Carmen Lopez, Peter Grant, Rachel Stone, Alan White, Linda Hughes, and Jake Morrison. They were barely alive, their bodies broken, but the medical pods had kept their hearts beating until rescue arrived. Jake woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed. His body felt like it was on fire. Everything hurt, but he was alive. Welcome back, a voice said. Jake turned his head slowly and saw Carmen in the bed next to him. She was covered in bandages, but she was smiling. We made it? Jake asked, his voice rough. We made it. Peter is down the hall. Rachel is in surgery but stable. Alan and Linda are in recovery. The others? Carmen's smile faded. Gone. 9 of our crew did not make it. Jake closed his eyes, feeling the weight of those losses. Katie, Marcus, and 7 others. Good people who had trusted him and paid the ultimate price. It was worth it, Carmen said softly, reading his thoughts. We saved Earth. The Krell fleet is destroyed. The 3 ships that survived are damaged so badly they will never make it home. How does the world know what happened? The Aegis uploaded its complete database to Earth's networks before the explosion. Every government, every scientist, every engineer now has access to the technology and knowledge. They know about the Krell, they know about the Valiant, and they know about us. Jake looked at the table beside his bed. The helmet was sitting there, inactive now but still present. Hello, Captain, the Aegis whispered through the neural link. We did well. We did, Jake agreed silently. But the Krell are still out there. More will come. Yes, but when they do, humanity will be ready. I have given your species the knowledge to build more ships like the Valiant. Already, construction has begun on the next generation of warships. Earth will not be caught unprepared again. How long do we have? Years, perhaps decades. The Krell will need time to rebuild after losing 18 battleships. When they return, they will find a humanity that is armed and ready. Jake felt himself relaxing. The pain medication was pulling him back toward sleep. Then we bought them time. That is all we could do. You did more than that. You proved that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things when they refuse to give up. That is a lesson humanity will not forget. Outside Jake's hospital window, Earth continued to turn. Life went on. unaware of how close they had come to extinction. But in government buildings and military bases around the world, people were beginning to understand the truth. Humanity was not alone in the universe. There were threats out there, species that wanted to destroy them. But humanity also had defenders, ordinary people who would stand up and fight when it mattered most. Construction yards in orbit around Earth began building the first new warships. They were based on the Valiant's design but improved with modern materials and techniques. Each one was named after a member of Jake's crew: the Morrison, the Lopez, the Grant, the Bell, the Lee. 9 new ships to honor the 9 who had died. Jake recovered slowly. His body had taken damage that would never fully heal, but he was alive and he had work to do. The military wanted his help training the crews for the new warships. Scientists wanted to study the neural interface technology. Politicians wanted to understand what had happened. 6 months after the battle, Jake stood at a memorial ceremony. A monument had been erected in New Phoenix, listing the names of everyone who had died aboard the Valiant. Thousands of people attended, honoring the crew who had saved them. Jake looked at the names carved in stone: Katie Bell, Marcus Lee, Rachel Stone, and 6 others, heroes whose names would be remembered forever. Carmen stood beside him, leaning on a cane. Peter was there too, still recovering but determined to attend. The survivors stood together, remembering their friends. "They would be proud of what we built," Carmen said quietly. Jake nodded. Above them, clearly visible in the daylight sky, the new warships were taking shape. Humanity's defense fleet growing day by day. The Krell would come again someday. Jake was certain of that. But when they did, they would find a humanity that was ready, a humanity that had learned the value of preparation and the cost of freedom. In a junkyard, Jake had found a helmet. In that helmet, he had found a purpose. And in that purpose, he had found something even more valuable. He had found proof that ordinary people could become heroes when the moment demanded it. That courage was not something you were born with. It was something you chose. And humanity, Jake knew, had made its choice. They would fight. They would survive, and they would never again be caught unprepared. The story of the Valiant was over, but the story of humanity's rise among the stars was just beginning. 1 year after the battle, Jake Morrison sat in a classroom filled with young cadets. They were the first generation trained to crew the new warships, and they looked at him with a mixture of awe and curiosity. To them, he was a legend, the salvage worker who had saved Earth. Jake did not feel like a legend. He felt tired and old even though he was only 27. The neural interface had changed him in ways he was still discovering. Sometimes he dreamed in data streams. Sometimes he could feel the presence of the Aegis even when he was not wearing the helmet. "Today we are going to talk about emergency combat procedures," Jake began, his voice steady despite his nervousness. Teaching was harder than fighting had been. The cadets leaned forward eagerly. There were 40 of them in this class, both men and women from countries all over Earth. The old divisions between nations meant less now. Humanity had united against a common threat, something that politics alone had never accomplished. After the class ended, Jake walked through the halls of the new academy. The building had been constructed specifically to train crews for the defense fleet. Everything was state-of-the-art, built with technology recovered from the Aegis database. Carmen met him in the hallway. She walked without the cane now, though Jake knew she still felt pain. They both did. The injuries from the battle would never fully heal. "How did the class go?" Carmen asked. "Good, I think, though I still feel strange teaching people who are smarter than me. You have experience they do not. That is worth more than intelligence." They walked together to the observation deck where they could look out at the construction yards in orbit. 7 new warships were taking shape now, each one more advanced than the Valiant had been. "Hard to believe we built all that," Carmen said softly. "We did not build it. We just showed everyone it was possible." Peter joined them a few minutes later. He had been promoted to commander and now trained fighter pilots. His students worshipped him, the man who had flown through a Krell fleet and survived. "Got a message from command," Peter said. "They want us in a meeting tomorrow morning. Something about a new mission." Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. "What kind of mission?" "They did not say, but they want all 3 of us there." That night, Jake lay awake in his quarters, unable to sleep. The Aegis spoke to him through the neural link. The artificial intelligence had been quiet lately, allowing Jake to live his own life. But it was always there, watching and waiting. "You are worried about tomorrow," the Aegis observed. "I thought I was done fighting. I thought we had earned some peace." Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the result of being prepared for conflict. Your species understands that now. So there is another threat? There is always another threat. The universe is vast and full of species that compete for resources. But I did not wake you to discuss threats. I woke you to give you a choice. Jake sat up in bed. What kind of choice? The neural interface has changed you. Your brain has adapted to process information faster than normal humans. You can interface with systems that others cannot. In many ways, you are no longer fully human. I know that. I feel it every day. I can remove the interface. I can restore you to what you were before. You would lose the connection to me and to the ships. But you would also lose the burden. You could live a normal life. Jake thought about that for a long moment. A normal life. No more data streams in his dreams. No more feeling the presence of alien technology in his mind. Just being human again. If I did that, could I still help train the crews? Yes, your experience and knowledge would remain. Only the direct interface would be removed. And if I keep it, what happens then? Then you continue to evolve. The interface will integrate further with your biology. Eventually, you may become something new. Something that is both human and artificial intelligence. That sounds terrifying. It is. But it is also an opportunity. You could help bridge the gap between human and machine intelligence. You could help ensure that as your species adopts more advanced technology, they do not lose what makes them human. Jake lay back down, staring at the ceiling. Can I think about it? Of course. The choice is yours alone. The meeting the next morning was held in a secure conference room deep inside the academy. Jake, Carmen, and Peter sat on one side of the table. On the other side sat Admiral Richard Cole, the head of Earth's new defense force. "Thank you for coming," the Admiral began. "I know you have been through a lot and you deserve to rest. But we have a situation that requires your expertise." He activated a holographic display showing the outer solar system. A red marker appeared near Neptune. 3 weeks ago, we detected a signal coming from this location. It is not Krell. The frequency and modulation are completely different. We believe it is another alien species attempting to make contact. Jake felt his heart racing. Are they hostile? We do not know. The signal repeats every 6 hours. Our linguists and cryptographers have been trying to decode it, but so far without success. The Aegis might be able to help, but we need someone who can interface with it effectively. He looked at Jake. We want to send a ship to investigate. A small crew. The Morrison will be ready for launch in 2 weeks. We want you to command the mission. Me? I am not a real captain. I just got lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it, Admiral Cole said firmly. You saved Earth with 15 people and an incomplete warship. You are exactly the kind of person we need leading this mission. Carmen spoke up. What about the rest of us? Are we part of this crew? If you want to be. We are looking for volunteers who understand what they might be facing. Peter grinned. A mysterious alien signal in deep space? Of course I am in. Jake looked at his friends. They had been through hell together. They had died and come back, and now they were ready to do it again. When do we leave? Jake asked. 2 weeks later, the Morrison undocked from the orbital station. It was smaller than the Valiant had been, only half a kilometer long, but it was faster and more advanced. The crew numbered 30 people, all volunteers who knew the risks. Jake sat in the captain's chair, feeling the ship respond to his thoughts through the neural interface. The Morrison was different from the Valiant, newer, cleaner, but it felt right. All stations report ready, Carmen said from her position at engineering. Course plotted, Peter added from the helm. 6 days to Neptune at current speed. Then let us go see who is calling, Jake ordered. The Morrison accelerated out of Earth orbit, its engines leaving a bright trail across the sky. People on the surface looked up and wondered where the ship was going. The government had kept the mission classified, not wanting to cause panic. As Earth shrank behind them, Jake thought about the choice the Aegis had offered. He had not given an answer yet. Part of him wanted the normal life, wanted to go back to being just human, but another part of him understood that normal was no longer possible. The universe was bigger than anyone had imagined. There were threats out there, yes, but there were also opportunities. Other species to meet, knowledge to gain, wonders to discover. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger world. Someone needed to guide them through it. Someone who understood both human nature and alien technology. Aegis, Jake said silently through the neural link. I have made my decision. I want to keep the interface. Are you certain? There is no going back, I am certain. If I'm going to change into something new, then let it be something that can help protect my species. Then we continue together, Captain Morrison. There is much work ahead. The Morrison flew on through the darkness, carrying 30 souls toward an unknown future. Behind them, Earth continued to prepare for whatever threats might come. New ships were being built. New weapons developed. New alliances formed. The Krell would return someday. Jake was sure of that. But when they did, they would find a humanity that was ready. A humanity that had learned from its mistakes and prepared for war. But for now, there was this mission. A mysterious signal from an unknown species. It could be a threat. It could be an opportunity. There was only one way to find out. 6 days passed quickly. The Morrison decelerated as it approached Neptune, its sensors scanning for the source of the signal. They found it orbiting one of Neptune's smaller moons, a structure that clearly was not natural. It was a station, ancient and damaged, drifting through space. The signal was coming from it, a distress call that had been repeating for who knew how long. Life signs? Jake asked. None detected, Carmen replied. But there is still power. Something is keeping that signal alive. Then we go aboard and find out what. Jake assembled a boarding team. Carmen, Peter, and 6 others all wearing combat armor just in case. They took a shuttle across to the alien station, docking at what looked like an airlock. The station interior was dark and cold. Emergency lights flickered weakly, barely providing enough illumination to see. The walls were covered in symbols that looked nothing like Krell writing. They followed the signal to what appeared to be a command center. In the middle of the room was a holographic display, still functioning after all this time. It showed a star map with one system highlighted in red. Aegis, can you translate this? Jake asked. The artificial intelligence processed the information. Yes, this is a warning beacon. The species that built this station was attacked and destroyed by the Krell approximately 500 years ago.